Welcome to the Sound of Ideas from IdeaStream Public Media. I'm Stephanie Haney. Thank you for being with us. June is Pride Month, an annual celebration honoring LGBTQ plus people, their history, and an ongoing movement toward equality. Most celebrations are secular in nature, but there are some religious organizations in Northeast Ohio hosting Pride events this year. Studies from Pew Research Center show that 80% of LGBTQ plus adults in the U.S. believe in spirituality, and nearly half identify with a religion. That's evidence that for many, religion is a source of belonging and spiritual guidance. But for others, experiences with faith communities have led to rejection, exclusion, and even trauma. Today, we're bringing together faith leaders to discuss how their congregations engage with the LGBTQ plus community, how they interpret their faith traditions' teachings on sexuality and identity, and what that relation looks like not just in June, but throughout the year. Joining me in studio today, we have Reverend Dr. George Graham, pastor at the Pilgrim Congregational United Church of Christ in Cleveland. Welcome to the show.
Thank you.
Also with us, we have Rabbi Shoshana Nair at the Suburban Temple Kol Ami in Beechwood. Rabbi, welcome.
Thank you.
And we have with us Father Damien Ference, Vicar for Evangelization at the Cathedral St. John the Evangelist, also in Cleveland. Welcome to the show.
Thank you. It's an honor to be here.
With us by video call, we have Reverend Derek Terry, Executive Director, Opened and Affirming Coalition, and part-time pastor at St. Peter's United Church of Christ in Cleveland. Welcome to the show.
Hello, thanks for having me.
If you would like to join this conversation, you can give us a call at 866-578-0903. You can also send us an email at soi@ideastream.org, or you can message us on Instagram at The Sound of Ideas. If you have a comment of an experience that you had that was particularly welcoming, affirming, or inclusive, we'd love to hear that. We'd also love to hear where you find there's room for improvement at the intersection of religion and the LGBTQ plus community. We'll start now with Reverend Graham. Reverend, the word welcoming is often used by faith communities. Is there a difference between welcoming and affirming LGBTQ identities?
I think that there is. Welcoming kind of gets people in the door, but affirming affirms a whole person's being and their gifts for ministry and includes them in the full life and ministry of the church.
Okay, thank you for making that distinction for us. I'm going to ask the full panel now, and I'll start with our video guest, Reverend Terry, who is joining us from Cincinnati, which we appreciate very much. Can LGBTQ people fully participate in the life of your congregation, whether that's leadership, teaching, ministry, or marriage? Are there any limitations?
Not at all. And actually, with the Open and Affirming Coalition, we have 1,958 churches that have made a covenant to include LGBT folk, regardless of their gender, sexual orientation, gender identity, gender expression, and they can participate in the full life of the congregation.
How about for you, Father Ference?
We like to make distinctions between, if I could go back to the welcoming and affirming, we like to start with the affirmation that every human being is created in the image and likeness of God, and every human being deserves respect and love. You may know, too, that we Catholics do have a long tradition of a high standard of sexuality and behavior, and most of us have fallen short of that at some point. So as Catholics, we do have a standard of ethics and a standard of living that we call everyone to, which is a life of holiness. And so anybody can be active in the Catholic Church, although there are certain standards that the Church holds us to and that we ought to strive to. And that doesn't mean that we get weak or we can fail or we ask for help and mercy, but we do have a standard, and I think most people know that and understand that, but that doesn't mean that we say you're not permitted here or you're not welcome here. We do welcome people. We welcome everybody. As Pope Francis would say, todos, 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 but there are certain standards that we hold for human behavior.
Rabbi Nair, how about for you?
At Suburban Temple Kolami and in the Reform movement in general, and even in other branches of Judaism, again, it comes from this place of B'Tselem Elohim. We are created in God's image, and we have no restrictions for not only welcoming, but full participation in congregational life, regardless of sexual orientation, gender identity, gender expression. Everybody is welcome. And we try and not only make the synagogue welcoming, but a place where people feel like they can belong as just as who they are. They don't have to change to fit in, and that the place is safe.
And Reverend Graham?
So, Pilgrim Congregational United Church of Christ, where I serve as pastor, is an open and affirming congregation, which Reverend Terry talked about, and we have been open and affirming since the early 90s. So we were an early adopter, and people are welcome into the full life and ministry of the church.
Rabbi Nair, let's go back to what you were saying about being a Reform congregation. Can you explain for us the difference in the types of Jewish ministries?
Sure. So there are different, we call them branches of Judaism. So sort of on one foot, many, many years ago, all Jews sort of practiced Judaism in the same way. And then when Jews were allowed to be more part of secular culture, there was a reforming, a changing of Judaism. And the first official branch of Judaism was Reform Judaism, and they said we can be Jewish and we can be Jewish and French, we can be Jewish and German, we can be Jewish and American, and they started to sort of change the way they practiced. It became very about sort of outside changes, and then it became more ideological changes of how we practice Judaism. And then there were other Jews who said, no, we want to practice the way we've always practiced. That sort of became more the Orthodox movement. And then there was kind of a middle ground that became conservative, that is very oversimplified. And then there were other movements that came out. There was Reconstructionist Judaism and Humanistic Judaism. There's lots of, but it's about your ideologies and how you practice. So there are, just as there are with Christianity, there are some parts of Christianity that practice one way and others that practice another way. So Reform is the sort of more liberal end of Judaism, where Orthodox might be the more conservative, small c, end of Judaism.
Okay. I'm going to stay with you for a moment here, Rabbi Nair. Many Americans, especially young people, see religion and LGBTQ identity as being in conflict. What would you say to someone who has felt alienated by religion or felt they had to choose between their faith and their identity?
I would say that probably in every religion there is a place for everybody, and it's about finding the right place for you. So there may not be a place in every synagogue or every church for everybody, and that is regardless. That's not just about sexual orientation or gender identity. It's also about how you practice your faith, and it's about how your political identity. It's about everything. And so I think it's about finding the right place and the right fit for you. And so I think that there are places in every religion for every human being, and it's about finding where you belong and where you can be. I teach a lot about the difference between fitting in and belonging, and you want to find the place where you can belong just as you are, and you don't have to change to fit in.
Father Ference, is there anything you'd like to add to that when it comes to people maybe feeling alienated or like they can't fully have both their LGBTQ identity and their religious expression?
Yeah, I think it's a wonderful question. And when it comes to identity, we certainly recognize people's experiences. And I think as a church, we could do a better job at listening to people who have had experiences, especially of trauma or of rejection. And part of the reason I'm so happy to be on this show is to be able to voice that for the Catholic Church, particularly here in the Diocese of Cleveland. But we also, at the same time, want to say that the deepest identity of the human person is not one's sexual orientation, but one's relationship to God as son or daughter or child of God. And so we want to start there, because we think that sometimes if we start with a sexual identity or a political identity or a nationality identity, then we're getting away from the core of who the human person is, created in God's image and likeness. So we want to bring people back to the core identity of the human person.
have a question now specifically for our members on our panel who are within the LGBTQ community. Our panel has shared with me their orientations beforehand. So these questions will be directed to Reverend Terry and Reverend Graham. And Reverend Graham, I'll start with you here with me in studio. I'm wondering if there have been times when your faith and your call to ministry were questioned because of your sexual orientation, and if that happened for you, how you managed that.
So I guess the tradition that I grew up in, I experienced a call to ministry before I came out as a gay man. I came out in the middle of seminary and could not be ordained because of that identity. I eventually found my way to the United Church of Christ, which recognized my call and my gifts for ministry, and I was able to be ordained in 2003. So I'm really grateful to the United Church of Christ for recognizing that call and allowing me into ministry.
Do you think that experience for you, where you weren't able to see what you were in that moment to the end, does that impact the way you handle your ministry today?
I think it does. In your previous question about guiding people who feel that conflict, it's been part of my experience. And so I think it's given me a degree of sensitivity and compassion, and also allows me to lead people through the journey.
And Reverend Terry, what about for you? Have there been times when your leadership in your ministry or your desire to do that were questioned because of your sexual orientation?
Absolutely. And my story is similar to my friend, Reverend Graham. In my last denomination, you could not be out and LGBT. I mean, there were plenty of people who were closeted, and that's not something that I was interested in. And I found the United Church of Christ, and I found the strength to be able to find the scripture and the wherewithal to not allow other people's opinion of my ministry to question who I knew God called me to be and what God called me to do, and to be in a space that I was affirmed because of who I am and all those intersections. I'm Black, I am LGBT, I am all of these things, and I can't separate any of those for anyone else.
Is there anything you're able to share about how that impacts the way you approach your ministry now where you are?
Absolutely, because now I get to encourage other people to find a space where they belong. Like the rabbi said, every space is not for everyone. And sometimes people contact me on social media or when I'm at an event, and they'll, tell me about their church experience or about where they live. And I will tell them, find a place that not only accepts your behind in the pew, but affirms who you are and gives you a sense of community and belonging. And I take all of the experiences that I had and let people know it does get better. It can get better. There's a seat for you at some table.
If you're just joining us here on The Sound of Ideas, today we're talking about the intersection of LGBTQ identity and religious identity. If you have a question or a comment, you can call us at 866-578-0903. You can also email us at soi@ideastream.org, and you can send us a message on Instagram at The Sound of Ideas. We have a panel of faith leaders here today who are talking about that intersection and how the LGBT community shows up in their different congregations, ministries, what have you. We have an email now in from Susan in Willowick. Susan writes, I am proud to be a member of another open and affirming church, Old South Church, in the UCC, in the United Church of Christ. We participate in Pride celebrations, and I have made great relationships with those who are welcome. We need to have places where people are welcome. Susan, thank you very much for sharing that comment with us. We appreciate it. And Father Ference, I would like to ask you, we've been talking a bit about the Catholic Church and the Catholic Church's approaches to sexuality and identity in this way. When people ask what your faith teaches about LGBTQ people in the community, what is your answer to that?
Well, I would start by asking about one's experience, and one's experience of life and one's experience of welcoming or maybe trauma that they've received somewhere. But if someone says, what do Catholics believe about the LGBTQ experience or community? We say that we are for all people, we love all people, and that we don't discriminate against anybody, and that all are welcome in our church. However, we also say that there is more to one's identity than letters LGBTQ plus, and that we want to walk with people, and we want to work with people, and we want to love people. So down at our cathedral, we actually don't ask, are you LGBTQ? Which we have open doors and people come to church. Now, if you want to become a Catholic, there are certain things you do to become a Catholic. You go through the OCIA process, or there's certain things you do to celebrate the sacraments. But everyone is welcome to our church, and I see people there all the time. We're right here in downtown Cleveland.
Can you tell us, Father Ference, about your Courage and Encourage programs for LGBTQ individuals and their supporters?
Yes. So we have two ministries within our diocese that are there to support people who want to live according to the law of the church. And so Encourage is for family members who have folks in their life who have LGBTQ experiences and want to get together and process what it means to love someone who is having experiences that maybe you don't understand. And then the Courage program are for people who want to live according to the law of the church and struggle, but need a community to gather with. So we have 3 chapters around our diocese that are run by priests to help them live a life of faith.
Thank you for that. Now, Reverend Terry, question for you. You mentioned being part of a ministry where it was not accepted to be open about the LGBTQ identity. I'm wondering, when you find a place that's more accepting, is it difficult to break ties with the place that you had that initial connection with? Was that a challenge for you in any way?
There is a sense of community, but anytime, that's why we make a distinction in our movement between welcome and affirming. That's what we're open to and affirming of. That's where our name open and affirming comes from, because it's every church says that all are welcome, but will you be affirmed? Will you be able to bring your complete and total self into the space? And so while it was hard for me to say goodbye to some of the relationships, and I still have those close relationships, but we don't have the same, we're not seeing everyone I'm not seeing everyone every Sunday or at, various conferences. While that was difficult, finding a space where I didn't have to shield who I was, or a place where people did not feel pity or distance because of my sexual orientation, was liberating and was life-giving. And all the anxiety I had about leaving, the gains have been so much more than what I lost.
Reverend Graham, can you share anything about what that may have been like for you when you were leaving seminary?
So I actually worked for the national church that I was born into, which was the United Methodist Church, for 10 years past seminary, and then decided that I needed to leave, and seeking ordination was one component in that. It was a very difficult choice, but considered over many years. And I'm happy to say that the United Methodist Church has made a change and is now affirming of GLBTQ folks, including into ordination.
Thank you for sharing that with us. Great news there. For our panel allies now, Rabbi Nair, I'll start with you. Has working with LGBTQ congregants shaped or challenged your understanding of faith, scripture, or inclusion? Have you had any kind of an evolution over time in the way you think about faith and sexual identity?
I think that because of when I sort of entered seminary, I entered seminary at a time when they were already ordaining openly gay rabbis, women, which was good. And so I didn't really have to struggle with that. But I do know that I actually grew up in the conservative movement. And one of the choices I made was conservative seminary versus reform. And at the time, one of the factors amongst many was that I wanted to be in a place that affirmed all identities, because that was important to me and that was important to who I was as a human being. I think that if we're going to talk about everybody being created in God's image, then we can't just talk about it, we have to live it. And I needed to be at a place that was going to not just talk the talk, but walk the walk. And so I wanted to be trained as a rabbi where I could then live out my values as a rabbi.
And
Go ahead.
are you finished?
Yeah.
Okay. I didn't mean to cut you off there.
No, then we're good.
Okay. Father Ference, I'd like to ask you the same question. Has your understanding of sexual identity and faith and that intersection, has it evolved over time with working with LGBTQ congregants?
Yes, certainly, especially listening to stories of people who have experienced pain and rejection, misunderstanding, being scolded or preached to and not listened to. I mean, Pope Francis, one of the things that he taught, hopefully the world, but certainly Catholics and especially priests, was be a listening church and sit with people and listen and understand their experiences. And I think at times we failed as a church to do that. We start with the rule or with the law and not with the human person, the one right in front of us. So I've certainly learned a lot in doing that.
Thank you for that.
You're welcome.
Father Terry, I would like to ask you about faith communities and your view on responsibility or lack thereof. Do you believe that faith communities in general have a responsibility to acknowledge the harm that religion has sometimes caused LGBTQ people?
I believe that they do, but I don't trust every faith community to do that or to do that well or to be a safe place to do that, because if you're coming from a place of seeing someone's LGBTQIA identity as a detriment and not something that is one of the many facets that makes them a beloved child of God, then I would rather those communities not try to do that work.
Thank you for sharing that with us, Reverend Terry. Reverend Terry, I know that we will be saying goodbye to you a bit earlier, so before we say goodbye to you, I would like to ask you about Pride events that are happening in your congregation, if you can share some of that with us.
So of course, Open and Affirming Sunday is the last Sunday of June, and so that's when we have a big service, and we try not to just do Pride in June. We try to do it all throughout the year, just make it a part of the calendar. And we've already had our neighborhood in Cincinnati had its Pride weekend a couple of weeks ago. So we had, service and participated in some of the things in the community. And yeah.
Okay. Thank you for that. Reverend Terry, where can people go to find out more about the services that you offer in Cincinnati?
You can go to stpeterscincy.com.
Okay. Thank you for that. Reverend Derek Terry, Executive Director, Open and Affirming Coalition, and part-time pastor at St. Peter's United Church of Christ in Cincinnati. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
We're continuing this conversation here on The Sound of Ideas about the intersection of religion and sexual identity. The number to call if you have a comment or a question is 866-578-0903. You can also send us an email at soi@ideastream.org, or you can send us a message on Instagram at The Sound of Ideas. We continue with our in-person panel here, and I would like to ask you, Reverend Graham, what role do you think faith communities should play in addressing discrimination, bullying, and violence against LGBTQ people?
Well, I hope that faith communities would be safe places for people who have experienced those things, and also be advocates for justice, for change in policy, for making the world into what we would say would be God's vision for a just and peaceful world.
Rabbi Nair, what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. So first of all, to be a safe place, and to know that anybody in the leadership at the synagogue are people you can come to if you've experienced that. But also, in the Reform movement, there is a lobbying branch called the Religious Action Center. And not only have they taken up, legislation that is pro-LGBTQIA, since actually it started with the Women of Reform Judaism in 1965, when they wrote a policy to decriminalize homosexuality. So it started all the way back in 1965, and there have been, from the Religious Action Center, from the Union for Reform Judaism, which is sort of the congregational branch, and from the Central Conference of American Rabbis, and the which is the rabbinic branch, and the Association of Cantors. There have been policies throughout where they have made statements. So I think when it comes from the leadership, that says something, and when it comes from the movement leadership, so really to be that voice of justice on the national level all the way down.
And Father Ferenc, what do you think about that? What role the religion should play in that way?
Oh, I think it should be able to enter right into people's sufferings and their hurts and their pains and bring them hope. I'm thinking if you go to the Cleveland Museum of Art, the two most prominent images of Jesus are when he's born in Bethlehem. It's a cold night, surrounded by animals, kind of chaotic, not ideal, and that's exactly where God wants to be. And then on the cross, taking on the sins of the world and saying, I am here, I'm pouring my life out, and he's a victim, and he understands people's hurts and their pain and their sorrow, and he wants to unite with that. And so anybody who has experienced any of those things, religion has to, if it's not there, where the heck is it going to be, you know?
It is Pride Month, which is the month-long celebration of the LGBTQ community, something that we hope that people are celebrating all year long, but June is particularly dedicated to it. So I'd like to ask each of you how your congregation is engaging particularly with Pride Month. Reverend Graham, I'll start with you.
So besides being very active in the March and Festival that happened earlier this month, we are hosting a community pride service at the end of the month on Sunday, June 28th at 3 p.m. at Pilgrim in Tremont. And people can go to pilgrimalive.org to get more information about that service. We think it'll be a great celebration.
And remind me that date one more time.
June 28th, Sunday, June 28th at 3 p.m.
Thank you for that. Rabbi Nair, how about for you?
So we too marched with Pride in the CLE, and we had a table there, which was wonderful. And we have our Pride Shabbat service tomorrow, Friday, June 19th at 6 p.m., followed by we call it a heavy oneg, which is like fellowship. Afterwards, we have members who are leading members of the community who are identify as LGBTQ plus, leading services with me and our music director. And we have a speaker, Greg Levine, who is a member of the community, talking about LGBTQ Jews throughout the decades. So that will be tomorrow at 6. You can find out more information at suburbantemple.org. And all are welcome.
Tomorrow, June 19th at 6 p.m. For
Yes.
anyone catching this on the replay or on a podcast platform or on YouTube, just so you know, so you don't miss out on that. Father Ferenc, how about for you?
I mentioned at the beginning, we don't have any particular pride celebrations during the month because of the way that we understand human beings. And that, as the other reverend said from Cincinnati, he celebrates pride all year long. We celebrate Mass, confessions, adoration, our sacraments, and our church is open all year long.
Let's close with the idea of belonging and what that looks like to each of you. We've got a couple minutes here, so I'll start with Father Ferenc again. Can you tell us, how do LGBTQ people know that they are welcome? How is that conveyed?
By coming to our church and in encountering our community. And so I know for a lot of people, they think the Catholic Church hates gays and they say no to all these things. But I've not encountered that in our place. And I know a lot of priests and I know a lot of ministers who are very good to a lot of people. We may not hang a pride flag outside our churches, but try it, step in. I mean, in the United States, we had a 36% increase in people becoming Catholic this year. Most are young adults. We have a very active young adult community. I don't ask them where they stand on in terms of the LGBT identity issues, but I'm certain that we have everybody in our congregation. And so try it. That's what I would say. Come on in. The water's warm.
Rabbi Nair?
I mean, I think just walking in the front door, when you walk in our front door, there's a stained glass rainbow flag. And so I think right from walking in our front door, it says we are a place that is welcoming and a place where you can belong. And I would hope that from the teachers on our faculty to the sermons that are given to the people who are involved from leadership on down, everybody can see themselves and see that this is a place where they can be truly and wholly themselves, where B'Tselem Elohim, being created in God's image, means that you are not just respected, you are not just accepted, but you are celebrated for who you are, wholly and completely.
And Reverend Graham, how about for you?
So we have a huge pride flag that we march with. It's 45, 50 feet long. That's hanging in the balcony right now, and people sit under it basically for worship. And I think that symbol of rainbow of God's covenant of grace and love, we really try to embody that, and that all are welcome.
Thank you very much. I want to thank our remaining panel here in person with us today. Reverend Dr. George Graham, pastor at the Pilgrim Congregational United Church of Christ. Thank you for being here.
Thank you.
Also, Rabbi Shoshana Nair at the Suburban Temple Kol Ami. Thank you.
Thank you.
And Father Damian Ference, Vicar for Evangelization at the Cathedral St. John the Evangelist. Thanks for being here.
Thank you. This was awesome.
We appreciate it very, very much. We're going to take a quick break now. When we come back, it's our first installment of Easy Day Away, featuring simple trips near Northeast Ohio. Today, we are headed to Chautauqua and Jamestown, New York. This is The Sound of Ideas. I'm Stephanie Haney. We'll be right back. You're with The Sound of Ideas from IdeaStream Public Media. I'm Stephanie Haney. Thank you for staying with us. As the summer gets underway, you might be feeling the urge to travel, but the cost of getting away has gotten more expensive lately as the U.S. war on Iran continues to squeeze access to oil, driving up the cost of both airfare and gas to fill up our cars. As a result of increasing prices, a survey from U.S. News and World Report released in April showed that 65% of Americans have changed their summer travel plans. For those of you who are being budget conscious but are still feeling that wanderlust, today we're launching a new summer series called Easy Day Away. We'll bring you ideas for simple trips you can take that are within a short drive of Northeast Ohio and don't require an overnight stay, unless, of course, you want to. For our first feature, we're highlighting Jamestown and Chautauqua in Chautauqua County in New York. These two cities are on either side of Chautauqua Lake, both about 2 hours east of Cleveland. Jamestown is home to both the Lucille Ball Desi Arnaz Museum and the National Comedy Center, and Chautauqua is known for its Chautauqua Institution, a historic 750-acre lakeside educational and cultural center. We'll learn about both areas today with the help of our guests. Calling in on video, we have Journey Gunderson, Executive Director with the National Comedy Center. Hello, Journey. Welcome.
Hello.
Also with us, we have Gary Hahn, board member and secretary of the Chautauqua County Visitors Bureau, calling in on video from the Lucille Ball Desi Arnaz Museum. Hi, Gary.
Hi, how are you?
Great, thanks for being here. And we're also joined by Deborah Sunya Moore, Senior Vice President and Chief Program Officer at the Chautauqua Institution. Hi, Deborah.
Good morning.
If you want to be part of this conversation, maybe you've been to Jamestown or Chautauqua or both, maybe you've got a recommendation for our audience, call us at 866-578-0903. You can also email us at soi@ideastream.org, or you can message us on Instagram at The Sound of Ideas. Now, Journey, for those who might not be familiar, can you explain what people will find at the National Comedy Center in Jamestown, which is where you're joining us from today?
Sure. Well, before we opened in 2018, the United States never had an official archive or museum for this art form of comedy that has been such a powerful cultural force. And so here in Lucille Ball's hometown, we brought her vision to a reality. And what we have is an interactive, immersive experience in all the ways that comedy as an art form has not just entertained us, but soothed us and challenged us in our lives. I was just telling someone the other day, we didn't necessarily design it to be a children's museum because we didn't want to censor the very art form we celebrate. And in fact, there is a Blue Room level about the most boundary pushing comedy of all time, which is a lot of fun. But now that we have opened and observed visitors, what we love is that truly visitors of all ages, from very young children on up, are really enjoying play here at this museum, and the intergenerational experience of being able to show someone in your family of another age cohort the comedy that you remember growing up with has just been magical to witness. And so it's a lot of fun, and it's right here.
It is something that transcends. Things that were funny in the past are still funny today, for sure. Now, Gary, your backdrop is a recreation of the living room and kitchen from the Lucy and Ricky Ricardo apartment set, one of the most iconic sets in TV history, which tells me you are inside the Lucy Desi Museum, which is right around the corner from the National Comedy Center in Jamestown. And you're celebrating special anniversaries this year. Tell us about that.
That's right. I am on the recreated set. We are celebrating this year the 75th anniversary of I Love Lucy, which Variety magazine just 2 years ago named the #1 TV show of all time, and certainly arguably the greatest TV comedy in history. So we're celebrating that all year long. And also the story of Desilu and Lucy and Desi's incredible careers. They were pioneers, they were innovators with I Love Lucy and also with Desilu Studios. I Love Lucy essentially invented the 3-camera approach to filming on film that allowed rebroadcast and essentially gave birth to the rerun. And so that was one of the most innovative things they did. But also just the type of comedy and just kind of the timelessness of I Love Lucy, which still plays in all over the world. The Desilu Studios gave birth to Star Trek and Mission Impossible, TV shows and movie franchises that we still watch and enjoy today. So it was an incredible independent studio for about 20 years. And Lucille Ball was the first president of a major studio when she took the reins in 1962. So we tell all of those stories here within these walls. And of course, Lucy is from Jamestown, so we're very proud of our hometown roots.
And you've been telling those stories for 30 years, with this being the 30th anniversary of the museum, is that right?
That's right. This is the 30th anniversary year. We just marked that on Memorial Day of this museum. And it's actually also the 35th anniversary of the Lucille Ball Comedy Festival, which we have coming up this August once again, always around her birthday, August 6th. And we have some great headliners here, and that's something the National Comedy Center and the Lucy Desi Museum produces
Sure.
every August.
We will get into that in just a bit. Journey, I want to return to you and ask you about a very exciting development that the National Comedy Center has acquired Mel Brooks archives. Now, I understand those are still being processed. There's a lot of material to go through there. But can you give us a preview of what you're finding in those archives?
Yes, I'm thrilled to do so. It doesn't get bigger than Mel Brooks in terms of living legends in comedy in so many ways. And a few of my favorite things from his archive include his handwritten World War II joke notebook. This is an 18-year-old Mel Brooks serving in World War II, and including in his call to duty, this taking up the mantle of entertaining and raising morale from that young age. I also love, someone asked me recently, because there's so many fans of his films, whether it be Spaceballs or Blazing Saddles or History of the World Part 1. They said, oh, is there a script from, and they always mention their favorite movie, Young Frankenstein, for example. And the answer is there are many. And I love that because it allows us to show the level of honing and iteration. There are a dozen of each of those scripts, different versions with different working titles and different edits. And then most notably, because, as we reflect on Mel Brooks and his imprint on this art form, he had this keen sense of not just that comedy could be cathartic and soothing, but that it could be wielded and it could be used to take back power from difficult situations. And so I love that we now have in the archives his handwritten lyrics to the song Springtime for Hitler from the Producers. And that's a great example of what Mel taught us. Future generations of comedic artists will have this as a playbook, and it's an important playbook to have. And I should note that already on display right now in Jamestown in our exhibit about Carl Reiner, his longtime greatest friend and collaborator, are materials from their collaborative efforts on Sid Caesar's Your Show of Shows, which had just one of the most incredible writers' rooms in any comedy history, and also their handwritten set lists from the 2,000-year-old man. Now, if you know the 2,000-year-old man bit, you know it was mostly improvised. But later, when they were finally laying it down into albums, we have some of those handwritten working papers. And of course, an emotional moment for many visitors in the museum right now is seeing the chairs and the TV trays where Carl Reiner and Mel Brooks would sit together each night, long after each of their partners had passed away, watching movies and watching television and laughing together. And in fact, when Carl passed away, Mel Brooks famously went over to his house every night and sat there in honor of his friend sitting Shiva. And so what you can dive into in terms of relishing in comedy's greatest hits in history here, it's both emotional, it's cathartic, and at the end of the day, it's funny. Most of our visitors leave saying, I didn't expect to laugh for 4 hours straight in a museum, but I just did.
A lot of laughing happening there. I am sure about that. Now, Deborah, let's say hello to you. And with the Chautauqua Institution serving as an education and cultural center, tell us about your summer programming and how you set things up by theme.
I would love to. So our summer season goes from June 27th to August 3rd. And every single day, there are between 5 and 25 events that you can go to. In addition to that, you can come on the grounds, you can dine, you can rent a boat at the lake, you can bike around. So imagine this beautiful place by the lake where you can see the best speakers and the most exciting performers. So we have morning speakers every morning of the summer, Monday through Friday. And you mentioned our themes. I'm excited to share with you that our theme of our first week is icons and instigators, women who change the world. So we begin with opening night on June 27th with Winona Judd and Melissa Etheridge. And we go right into Monday morning with Nora O'Donnell and Deborah Roberts. It's going to be such a fantastic week with so many amazing women. We feature the CEO of Vital Voices Global Partnership, Elise Nelson. We move on to our Olympic gold medalist athlete, Carrie Walsh Jennings. And then we have Sutton Foster and Kelly O'Hara, 2 Tony-winning actresses, both in the morning for a conversation. You can hear about their thoughts on leading ladies in the world of Broadway. And then they perform for our Chautauqua Symphony Orchestra opening night that evening at 8 o'clock. So that's an example of the theme, but other themes include our second week. That is coming right off of July 4th. We have an amazing performance with the orchestra. And then we go into a week on media. And it features some pretty exciting people. Chuck Todd, of course, host of the Chuck Todd Cast. We move to Jason Riley. He's an opinion columnist with the Wall Street Journal. Paula Kerger, CEO and president of PBS. And we end with Neil deGrasse Tyson and Scott Hamilton Kennedy. So that's our week on media. Other weeks include The Ethics of Enough on disposability, arts and artists against all odds. You'll get to hear from artists like Kwame Alexander, an author who will talk about his new musical. And that includes Chris Jackson. He was Washington and Hamilton. He's the composer for this musical.
Wow.
Includes Natalie Merchant, Jamestown native, and many more pretty incredible people.
It sounds like a
moving
very
all the way.
busy summer coming up, Deborah, for the Chautauqua Institution. I'd like to ask you, I know there are 9 themes for 9 different weeks throughout the summer season. How do you set the themes? How far in advance is that happening?
We set the themes about a year in advance. So actually today we're announcing our themes for 2027. So people can always see on that website and start planning. We set not only the themes, but some major partners and also some key speakers.
We've got an email now in from a familiar person to many people here in Northeast Ohio, Doug Tratner, who I know spent some time in Chautauqua. And he says, don't forget to mention the Stowe Ferry, a cable-guided ferry that has been going since 1811. It runs between Stowe and Bemis Point. I think I'm pronouncing that right, hopefully so. All summer on weekends. It's free. It's now a nonprofit that accepts donations. It's the quickest and most fun way to cross the narrowest part of the lake. People, bikes, cars, dogs, all allowed. Thank you for the comment, Doug. We appreciate that insight. And that is a point to make here. So we're talking about Jamestown and we're talking about Chautauqua, which are on opposite sides of Chautauqua Lake. And So you do have to traverse that body of water in some way, or maybe go down around it or up over it if you're going for the scenic route. Gary, I'd like to talk to you about another famous person from the Jamestown area, the late U.S. Supreme Court Justice Robert H. Jackson. The Robert H. Jackson Center documents his time in public service, so tell us about that.
Yes, just a few blocks from the Lucy Desi Museum is the Robert H. Jackson Center, which talks about his life, another Jamestown native who was a U.S. Supreme Court Justice and head U.S. prosecutor for the Nuremberg trials. So the center has wonderful programs and exhibits talking about democracy and justice under the law. They do a wonderful job. It's a very powerful story, and many people may have seen the Nuremberg movie that came out last year, which touches on that, and Justice Jackson was a major part of that film, of course. So it's really a wonderful exploration of democracy, fairness, and justice under the law.
Back to Journey for a moment. We were talking about Mel Brooks and the archives coming to the National Comedy Center. Mel Brooks, by the way, turning 100 on June 28th, so happy early birthday to Mel Brooks. The National Comedy Center has a new book out, Funny Stuff, How Comedy Shaped American History. The foreword in it is by Mel Brooks. Journey, tell us about the book.
It's incredible that for how much comedy has shaped our history, it hasn't until now been a formal part of the historic record. And it's often said that you can learn a lot about a country through its comedy. There may be the facts about the events that transpired, but the comedy reveals what was the mood in the room about what was happening. And so, yes, Mel Brooks wrote the foreword, and we've been partnering with the Smithsonian Institution for a long time, talking about our respective collections. And now this is the first time we've put into a collection of essays in a beautiful coffee table book. And if you're looking at the live stream, you can see the cover right here. It's an incredible account of how comedy has shaped us. And we kind of organize it by theme and contours in the art form, how comedy can shape how we see each other, how comedy has created identity, how comedy provokes conversation, and how comedy, of course, breaks the mold. So you're learning about figures like Lenny Bruce, who really stood up for freedom of speech and the First Amendment. You're learning about the obscenity trials that he went through just to perform in an authentic way to his voice. But you're also reading about sitcoms like The Simpsons and how they were received at the time. So whether it's Carol Burnett's Went with the Wind dress, or George Carlin's handwritten joke notes, or to name more of a contemporary, Ali Wong's Baby Cobra dress from one of her famous specials. This book is just an incredible collection of stories about comedy you may remember and comedy you may not be familiar with, but also what did it mean and how did it, in many ways, shape or stand at the forefront of progressive social change movements. So it's been an incredible partnership with the Smithsonian, and we're really proud to showcase some of our archives. It's almost like an extension of the museum experience.
You can take it home with you if you would like to. We've got an email now from Craig in Cleveland, and Craig writes, "My husband and I have been to both Jamestown and Chautauqua Institution on a number of occasions. I highly recommend them both. The National Comedy Center and the Lucy and Desi Museum are the best kept secrets in the area. They're interactive and fun. Jamestown, also Lucille Ball's final resting place." Craig says the Chautauqua Institution has impressive programming with great speakers from respected leaders in their fields. Thank you for that, Craig. Deborah, we have just a few seconds here left. Can you tell us about the theater opening in Chautauqua on June 27th?
I can. The Row Green Theater Center is going to be just an amazing new space. And we not only have main stage theater and comedy in our typical theater, which is Bratton, but our new theater, we have a black box. We are going to be doing some late night events with some concessions. I think it's going to be a ton of fun. And people could come to those late night events after some of our big popular entertainment series.
That is a great idea. Thank you for sharing that with us, Deborah. I'm sorry to cut this short, but we are out of time. I want to thank our panelists for joining us from Chautauqua County. Journey Gunderson, the Executive Director of the National Comedy Center, Gary Hahn, Board Member and Secretary of the Chautauqua County Visitors Bureau, and Deborah Sunya-Moore, Senior Vice President and Chief Program Officer of the Chautauqua Institution. Thank you very much for your time. We appreciate it today.
Thank you.
All right, if you missed any part of today's show, you can hear a rebroadcast tonight at 9 on 89.7 WKSU. You can also find every episode of The Sound of Ideas wherever you get your podcasts and on YouTube. To get the last word on today's topics, you can email us at soi@ideastream.org or find us on Instagram at The Sound of Ideas. Yesterday, we talked about Cleveland Heights High School commemorating its 100-year anniversary with celebrations and fundraisers this weekend, and Beth emailed in. I'm a 1974 graduate of Cleveland Heights High Schools and the Cleveland Heights University Heights School District. Her graduating class had 860 students, and her spouse and 3 kids, in air quotes because they are grown-ups now, all went through the Heights School District. She remembers strong academics and sports, and the Heights being a leader even when Title IX was just coming into effect with interscholastic sports for girls. She said the difference then, though, is that the moms drove the teams to the away games. She said her children had an incredible experience there with life exposure, strong coursework, musical involvement, and real-world experience. Thank you for sharing that with us, Beth. Tomorrow on The Sound of Ideas, it's the Friday Reporters Roundtable hosted by Mike McIntyre. This week, he's joined by Zaria Johnson and Anna Huntsman here at the Idea Center, and IdeaStream's State House News Bureau Chief Karen Kassler joins from Columbus. I'm Stephanie Haney. Thank you very much for keeping the conversation going and being with us today and this week and always here on The Sound of Ideas. Have a great weekend. We'll see you back here on Monday.